HaShem. How you guys doing? Man, it's good to be alive. This week is Sukkot festival of booths or tabernacles. Right now we're in between the what's called Yom Tovs, right? First and seventh days, or in the exile it's first and second and seventh and eighth, I think. The intermediate days are called Chol HaMoed. We're on Sukkot 5 today. Which I don't think we even know what that means. At least not most of them. Good to see you too, BB. Man, I hope you're doing well. Yesterday has been just driving me nuts. On and off. It was really weird. Most of the time in the morning and at night it's not that bad. Seems to be like the only time I can get any decent work done and any kind of focus. Most of the time during the day, it just seems to be like maybe I can get like an hour where I'm not just going completely out of my mind. Yeah, that's really weird. Yeah. I don't know what the deal is. Well, it's like all my rotten midot and just desire, like the Yetzirah, pretty much the only thing that the Yetzirah has any real grasp on me on is like food and sleep. And so it uses those to its advantage. So I just try to like ignore it as long as I possibly can, and then just like eat something halfway healthy, but eat enough to where I can like satiate the desire for food and the bodily need to get enough energy to where I can get like at least 3, hopefully maybe 4, sometimes 5 hours of like focused time. But it's just nuts. Most of the time it seems like the worst time is like after I eat, like I've already eaten and like I'm trying to walk around so I don't get a blood sugar spike or do something. Like I've been trying to do what the Ramchal says, is setting aside set times. Pretty much all the sages say this. We have to set aside set times every single day to learn Musar and stick to them. And man, it's just very challenging sometimes. But Baruch HaShem, if it wasn't for the Yetzirah, we would be able to earn our bread. The festival of Sukkot, let's say it's one of the only Jewish holidays that has a connection to the entire world, like even the 70 nations, all the goyim, all the gentiles. It's in that regard, it's like Rosh Hashanah, which all the world is judged. All the world gets judged on Rosh Hashanah. But that's like the mostly individual judgment on Rosh Hashanah. Sukkot, there's also an additional judgment. It's like not, but not as much for individuals as for like the entire world. Let's say, just say God decides basically if the world is going to eat on Sukkot. I can't remember if I told you guys last time, but it's a really good thing to pray for God to grant strength to the Jews to follow the Torah anytime, but it's especially critical during times like Sukkot, and to pray for no rain to fall on the Sukkot on the Jews while they're in the Sukkah, especially not in Eretz Israel. I read a post on Halakot Yomi. It's ran by Rav Ovadia Yosef's students based on his rulings of halakha, and it says rain in Eretz Israel, in the land of Israel, during the festival of Sukkot is an ominous sign. And so far I think it's been dry, which is excellent. You know, it's so weird. I was thinking about that a couple days ago. For some reason, what's his name? Trump's VP, Mike Pence's voice popped into my head. Her fate is our fate. And it's so weird when you hear words of truth out of the mouths of wicked people. And most of the time, I'm like 99.99999% sure that the people have no clue whatsoever that what they're saying is true, other than, you know, in relation to their own desires of, like in Mike Pence's case, like for absolute evil of converting as many Jews as possible to Christianity. But the fate, and it's not just the land of Israel, it's the people. Like the fate of the Jews determines pretty much the fate of the world. When they're, at least a certain number of them, follow the Torah well enough, and they can kind of uphold the rest of their nation as far as merits go, then the world benefits greatly. But if they don't, then the world suffers. One of the Haftarot, no, it's both BV. It's I mean, obviously the people are more important, but the land has a great significance. It's just way more than a piece of dirt, like the Zionists, at least most of the Zionists think. It certainly has absolutely nothing to do with the state of Israel. The state of Israel is just a political entity for corrupt Zionists and various people that really don't like God. no matter what the words out of their mouth say. But the land's important because God says it is. It is the Holy Land, Eretz HaKodesh. And there's certain mitzvot in the Torah that can only be performed in Eretz Yisrael. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu, why Moses wanted so badly to go cross the Jordan, cross the Jordan into Eretz Yisrael, because he knew that there was so many mitzvot, so many commandments that could only be done inside the land. Speaking of that, this week is the this week is Parashat V'Zot HaBrachah, the last two chapters of the book of Deuteronomy. Baruch HaShem. And unfortunately, Moshe passes away. There's every single week there's proof. Every single week, Baruch HaShem. This week, proof of what? Proof that the New Testament is absolutely false, and that there's only one truth, and that is the Torah. If you got your Chumash and you figured out how to read it, it's kind of difficult at first figuring out, you gotta, God's language reads from right to left, so you gotta flip the book the other way when you're reading it. And when you're reading the commentary, you have to read left to right on the right page, and then go to the left page on the other side, and then read right to left, and then turn. And it took me a while to figure out, and I still get kind of confused, like, okay, where am I at, and how do I get to where I'm trying to go to? God will help you out. But if you read the commentary in the Chumash, and I think it's also in the Rashi, pretty much anywhere you look, this week when Moses passed away, God prepares, the sages say that Moses' grave was one of the, I think it's 10 things, one of the 10 things that God created on Erev Shabbat at the beginning, like the first 6 days on the 6th day of creation. I can't remember what all of them are, but sages say that God created the grave where Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, was going to be buried at the end of the 6th day. And the Torah says that, let's go look at the verse. How much did, let's see if we can get something going on here. I'm going to go find, not translations, table of contexts, chapter 33. The parasha starts out with V'Zot HaBrachah, Asher, Baruch Moshe, Ish Elohim. This is a blessing with which Moses, the man of God, bade the Israelites farewell before he died. Verse 2, book of Deuteronomy chapter 33. He said, The Lord came from Sinai, he shone upon them from Seir. He appeared from Mount Paran. He approached from Ribos Kodesh, lightning flashing at them from his right. Oh, that's not what it says. At least not what it's supposed to say. That's a faulty translation. We gotta fix this. There we go. Stupid, heretical Amalek GPS translation. There we go. We're going with the Koran Jerusalem translation. And he said, The Lord came from Sinai and rose up from Seir. To them he shone forth from Mount Paran, and he came from holy multitudes. From his right hand went a fiery law for them, meaning the Torah. Rabbi Reuben in the lecture that he did this week from Eretz Israel, he said he gives an awesome insight to the second, like the first and second verses that we just read. He says, he talks about the blessing. He says the first and biggest blessing is in verse number 2, that the biggest blessing is the Torah itself. But most people don't realize it at all. Torah is such a wonderful, life-giving blessing. It's just the best. But even when we know that, or at least have some kind of clue that that's the case, it's still easy to get caught up in all the nonsense and kind of forget how important it is, and all the stuff that it teaches and the sages teach. Yeah. Baruch HaShem, how you doing, Gordon? Yeah, that's the there's so many clues in so many things to do with God. Like the Hebrew language itself was read from start at the right, right to get right, like you said, BB. But the sages say that the right side is alludes to like spiritual strength. But one thing I realized a while back was how like there's concepts like the Jews are always going to be the Jews and the nations are always going to be the nations, and there's no intermarriage or dissolution or anything whatsoever. And God put a clue in like all you got to do is try to download or load a Hebrew keyboard on your phone or your computer, and you don't even have to know what you're spelling. Just type out some words in English and then type out some words in Hebrew. Or sometimes you can even just copy and paste like the Rashi commentary on a couple of verses if it's got any Hebrew in it, and it just does not work correctly. It doesn't play right together. Like like at a certain point, the words, like the entire thing you're typing, will jump from a line from the left side of the column, and then all of a sudden it'll switch to the right if there's a certain number of Hebrew characters that get written. Or if you try to paste, it'll paste the paste the Hebrew in just weird spots. Like it won't go where you want it to go. It'll just decide that I'm going to go over here. There's no way you can possibly fix it. So take that. Because they're holy. That's one of the most important things about holiness is separation. Separate from whatever God deems as impure. I know that probably, wrenches people the wrong way, especially if we're going. It is what it is. I mean, it's not like we're impure like a pig, unless we act like a pig, or a cockroach of the land or the sea, or something like that. But the sages say that at Mount Sinai, in the process of all the trials and the revelation, that all the Jews got purified of I forget what the Hebrew word is, but there's some spiritual impurity that was present in basically all of mankind since creation. But all the Jews that were at Mount Sinai experienced the miracle of God giving the Torah, that it got purified out of them. But all the nations, all the goyim still have it. But if anyone wants to, any non-Jew can convert, and it doesn't, none of, so much of it makes absolutely no logical sense. But if we go through all the steps and we learn everything and do everything we need to do, maybe not the second or the minute, but sometimes it happens immediately, and sometimes it takes like a couple of days or a week or something. But at some point, relatively soon, you go from being a goy to a Jew, and you get a brand new soul. Like the old soul of the non-Jew just pretty much like disintegrates. It goes away, and then God gives us a brand new soul. Or at least He will, once we complete conversion. We're trying to get to Moses' burial. See if we can find it here. Okay, Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 5 and on a ways. What in the world? Keep switching translations here. Okay. So Moshe, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in the valley in the land of Moab over against Bet Peor, but no man knows his grave to this day. No man knows where his grave is. the commentators say not even Yeshua ben Nun, not even the prophet Joshua or any of the elders, none of the nation knew where Moses was buried. God did that for a very specific reason, because he knew Moses was the greatest prophet of all time. So it's only natural that people's deranged ideas and perspectives. Basically, God knew that people have a tendency for idol worship and to deify human beings when that's certainly not called for. And he knew it was extremely likely, since Moses was the greatest of all the prophets, and ever would be, because that's what God says in the 5 books of Moses. No one is or will be like Moshe. And so God himself buried Moses and didn't tell anyone where he was at. Basically, conversion is, everyone says that conversion is I think it's a 2/3 step process. You learn, you apply what you learn, and then once you get to a certain point, you go to a Jewish court called a Bet Din, and then if you're a guy, you probably have to get some kind of surgery done, it's called the Brit Milah, the circumcision. If you already had one when you were a kid, you probably don't have to have much, depending on who the doctor was. But other than that, it's learn the laws to a point where you understand them well enough to do them and accept various things, to where you're not going to be an Arav wicked convert. Basically, accept the authority of the oral Torah, and that you have to live in a Jewish community, and then the rabbis of the Bet Din will give you an okay. And the critical thing to know is you want to go to a kosher Bet Din, which is not easy to find, because there's a lot of organizations and stuff that will give pretty much anybody a certain some piece of paper that says that they're Jewish, but what God accepts is very strict, and most of them, according to the Torah laws, are not what is called righteous judges. So they have no authority whatsoever, and all the judges that are righteous judges, and all the Jews that are like strictly adhere to the laws, they will look at your piece of paper like it's something you could print off at Kinko's for 5 cents. And they're not gonna let you pray at their shul, and they're not gonna let you move into their community, and they're certainly not gonna let your kids marry their kids. And it causes a whole host of issues. I mean, there's certain things that go on where people convert. They think it was like a kosher conversion. They went, they knew, okay, we got to go to Orthodox Orthodox place, but then they find out that like one or more of the judges, the Dayanim at the court is like either an undercover like missionary or a heretic or whatever. And then they've been living as Jewish for 2, 10, 5 years, something like that. And then they have to go through conversion all over again. But the thing to remember is that no matter what challenges that we have to go through, everything comes from God. And whatever like insane hurdles that we have to go through, and just whatever it is all like the best bargain that you could possibly imagine. Like imagine finding a Ferrari in the 99-cent store, but it's way better than that, like 1,000,000 times better. The Haftarot for the first day of Sukkot, it was Zechariah chapter 14, and in it talks about the end of days, like the War of Gog and Magog, and the after it doesn't really describe like Mashiach coming, at least not in chapter 14, but it describes like what will happen, like the war of Gog and Magog, and then all the people, like some of the translations say their eyes like rotted in their head or decomposed, or what a lot of the modern rabbis interpret it as is basically like a nuclear war. Like after the most of the descendants of Esav and Ishmael, the most of the Christians and most of the Muslims decided they've had enough with fighting against each other, and make like a ceasefire to turn on the Jews, and then a whole like it's a horrible mess, like just horrendous. I mean, you look at like the numbers of people in the world, and what the prophets say, like in various, like the Zechariah 14 and Ezekiel 38, and it's like it sounds like barely anyone's gonna make it. Not to mention the conditions just to get that far, like what like how crazy it's gonna be. But there's gonna be a whole like ton of people that die even before the War of Gog and Magog. But after all that's over, all the nations that are like all the Gentiles that are left, they'll all go to Eretz Israel from all over the world every year during the festival of Sukkot to dwell in booths. And if they don't, God is going to withhold their rain, so they starve to death. Or at least some of them will starve to death. It's kind of weird, though. You know, you would think anyone that would make it to that point would be would not be so like anti-God, I guess, stubborn and foolish, and and arrogant. But such is the nature of people, unfortunately. That's one of the reasons why the sages say that this time of year is connected so deeply with the physical bounty of the world, like how it goes on Sukkot is how it goes as far as as far as people's actions. How it goes during Sukkot is how it goes for the entire year. As far as, I mean, they say rains, but really the rains are just something that signifies all the physical abundance. Like that's one of the blessings and the curses from earlier in Kitavo. I think that's what it is, Kitavo, where it says you will get rain in your season, which is a tremendous blessing. Rashi says it'll fall at times when it won't inconvenience anyone, like at night or when people are inside. But then one of the curses will be I forget, it's switched it one way in Bechukotai and it's reversed in Kitavo. I can't remember which is which, but one says your skies will be like brass and your land like iron, and the other is your skies will be like iron and the land will be like brass. Basically meaning that there will be no rains, and it will be like any tiny amount of moisture or dew that does fall will just like whip around the dust onto the plants, and it will dry the plants up, and they'll just, like, anything that does sprout out of the ground will shrivel and die before it's anywhere near getting harvested. Just horrible stuff. It wasn't supposed to rain here this week, but weather changed a bit. Let's read some Taurus of Victor, or Victor Miller. Let's just find the one from the Spiritual Harvest. Here we go. If Sukkot is teaching us about a spiritual lesson of Hashem's providence, that Hashem is watching over us and protecting us, how does that fit in with the idea that it's the Hag of Ha'asif, the festival of gathering in the crops? Doesn't it seem to be a physical joy? Rav Victor Miller answers, and the answer is that everything is physical and everything is spiritual. When we gather in the harvest, we do it with the understanding that this is the Birkat Hashem, the blessing of Hashem. We understand that it's only because of Hashem that we have a harvest. A harvest is not an accident after all. Can anybody in the world produce food? Even with all the technology, all the advances in technology, they're still unable to produce food. Nobody can make a grain of wheat. Nobody can produce a barley. Nobody can make an apple. And therefore, the harvest is nothing but tokens. We gather in tokens of the miracles of food. Food is a miracle. Everything is a miracle. Only Hakadosh Baruch Hu knows. Only the Holy One may be blessed knows the process of producing a life-sustaining food from sunlight and water and carbon dioxide and a little bit of materials from the earth. food is miracles of miracles. And therefore, when we take in the harvest, it certainly is a demonstration that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge of the world. And the fact that he has granted us this harvest makes us happy. And the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us. And therefore, we utilize the abundance of the soil, the wealth that nature gives us, to appreciate that all this is nothing else than the handiwork of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the great designer, the great engineer, the great agriculturalist, I think that's what it said. Call him whatever you wish, but it's Hashem. And therefore, it's fitting on the festival of the harvest to be more aware of the providence of Hashem than on any other occasion. There's links for this, I think there's links for that one, and then this PDF is an awesome PDF all about Sukkot. It's important to know the reasons, at least, if we're going to convert. It's important to know the reasons behind the mitzvot, other than because God said so, which is really the only reason. But people need other reasons to, connect to them. What should we be thinking about when we sit in the sukkah? When we sit in the sukkah, the Torah tells us what our thoughts should be. Hashem says that the reason we sit in the sukkah is in order that your generation should know that I put your forefathers into sukkahs, into tents and huts, when I took them out of Egypt. Pay attention. During the 40 years in the wilderness, Bnei Israel were more secure against foreign enemies than at any subsequent time in our history. They lived in open camp with no fortifications, vulnerable to attack from anyone, and yet they were safer than any other time. Now, how we had fortified cities in the Midbar, in the desert, high walls and people standing on the walls with bows and arrows prepared to shoot at the enemy, maybe. But they had nothing at all. All the nations knew that we were carrying all the wealth of Mitzrayim, all the wealth of Egypt. I always gave the same mashal, the same teaching. Suppose you go to Harlem or to Bedford-Stuyvesant and make a tent on an empty lot, and you went to sleep there for the night. And everybody, all the people who live there, know that you have a pile of money in your tent. What chance do you have to survive? I mean, seriously. And it wasn't one night. It wasn't a month or even a year. It happened for 40 years. And where do they live? Not in houses. They were in Sukkot. A sukkah is not a house. Some flimsy walls, some sticks on top, whatever it was almost nothing at all. That's a protection. The answer that it was the most effective protections we ever had. The camp of the Am Yisrael was invulnerable because there was a sukkah overhead, and that was the Ananek Kavod, the clouds of glory, the clouds of the presence of Hashem that were protecting them. And that's what the sukkah that we sit in symbolizes. We sit in the sukkah under the shak, the vegetative greenery that they put on top. The sukkah, and we say, this sukkah is a pretty flimsy protection. There's no roof of masonry, and there's no iron door. There's nothing. And yet that flimsy sukkah overhead represents the idea that it's Hashem who is protecting our nation throughout all the generations. The main reason for, or one of them anyway, is to be reminded that God runs the world. And to go out in the sukkah and reinforce reinforce emunah and bitachon in Hashem, that He is the protector. He decides if rain is going to fall or if it's going to be a tornado. There's a really good one on the water drawing festival in here. They first talk about in the first post of the PDF, or the link that's there. Sukkot, a time of celebration. And it talks about in the Chumash on I think it's in the book of Numbers, chapter 29. It's in Parashat Pinchas. Pinchas has such an amazing merit. A whole bunch of the Chagim Torah readings, a bunch of the holiday Torah readings are in Parashat Pinchas. In chapter 29, oh, that's the other thing. Let's talk about the 70 sacrifices. In the Torah reading, like for each day, it goes through. It's kind of confusing. I'm not sure exactly how it goes, but I think it's kind of different depending on what the minhag, what the custom of the community is. That's another thing, BV, that I've been meaning to. We need to go over a whole deal in another stream, but you said you ordered a Sidur. You got to pick which nusach, unless you already did that. Whether you're going to pick Ashkenaz or Sephardic. I've already decided this before I even solidified the fact that I'm going to convert. I figure Rabbi Yoram Reuben is Sephardic, and that's where I learn, and that's where I'm most comfortable, like as far as pronunciation and all that. So I figure I kind of feel like a heretic if and it just seemed weird if I picked Nusach Ashkenaz. Anyway, let's get back to the 70 sacrifices. Every day, like during Sukkot, there's a list of sacrifices in the book of Numbers, chapter 29. I think it starts around verse number 12 and it ends on verse 44 on the 8th day of Sukkot. From the first day of the festival through the 7th day, all the bowls total 70 bowls equals to the 70 Noahide nation. And all those sacrifices were all for the merit and the protection and blessing of all the goyim. Like every single year, the Jews made all those sacrifices in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple, for all the benefit of all the goyim in the world. And our ancestors so stupidly went and shot themselves in the face by destroying the holy temple twice. Proving stuff, not for the first time, and certainly not for the last time, that the words of the sages are so true. A person has no clue without Torah whatsoever. I think good is evil and evil is good, and man, people are so foolish. But the sages say there's lots of secrets in every single verse in the Torah. But there's a lot of stuff going on in as far as like the progress or process or degradation or whatever you want to call it, as we inch towards the resolution of the end of days and the coming of Mashiach and the War of Gog and Magog and all that stuff, is that the sacrifices of all the bulls for the Gentile nations start out at 13, and I think the sheep represent the Am Yisrael. They represent the Jews, and they are consistent at 14, if I'm remembering correctly. And they stay the same every single day. Let's say that signifies that basically it doesn't matter how powerful the goyim are, how weak they are, or how cool they seem, or what year it is, that their obligation to God doesn't decrease one iota. It stays at 14, or 100% basically, to where, in comparison to the Gentile nations, they have, they're strong like bulls. There's like, this is the other thing, is that the offerings for the nations are the big strong ox or bull, and the offering of that represents the Jews is the sheep. Pretty puny and weak, at least compared to a bull physically. And we're losing energy here. Baruch HaShem, you chose Sepharad. Yeah, that's the way to go. If unless you're the other thing is your what is it, the community that you're going to move to. But that's somewhat flexible. But yeah, a week is too long. I have to fight the Yetzirah and be more consistent. I'm gonna try to do that. Blee netter, no swearing. But with God's help, we will be more consistent. But the phone is probably not going to make it too much longer, unless we hide in a dark hole. What else? Oh yeah, the number of bulls sacrificed eventually dwindle. It starts at 13, 7 days. It's 13, 12. Excuse me. 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. 7 bulls on the 7th day. And even though according to what people may think, like the temple's destroyed, the Jews are all scattered, the church and, whatever else seems all powerful church slash Zionist atheist mentality, to where, but that, that's all really a complete illusion. They only seem powerful. And it's gonna get worse, more than likely, unless a lot of people do a huge amount of teshuvah and just a massive amount of kiruv. Well, there's no guarantees anything's gonna remedy the insanity. All we can do is try our best. But the just getting to the end of days, War of Gog and Magog, before it even begins, is going to be so brutal. This is why we have to learn as much Torah as we possibly can and apply it with stringency and just diligence, because God says in the prophets that He's gonna refine, like, all the people that are like at least 51% righteous and inching towards 100. He's gonna refine us all like silver and gold. Meaning it's gonna be brutal. We're gonna get cooked and smelted, and he's gonna skim the slag off the top. But that thing we found like 6 months ago or something from Orach Chaim about how valuable learning Torah is. That's what we have to do, because the more that we can refine ourselves by refining our character traits and learning Musar, and just like every spare moment that we can find to learn Torah, that will help us get through the at least some of the brutal stuff, to where when God throws us all into the cauldron and starts turning up the heat, it won't be as bad as it would be if we wouldn't have done that. Plus, the other thing is, I mean, how can we not? Life is just too hard to deal with without Torah, and the benefits are just so amazing. We got some other stuff we have to try to do another stream tomorrow night, because there's just so much, and we have been so procrastinating. We got a stream. I'm probably not going to get to it because there's just too much new stuff. But man, there's still a few percentages of battery left here. For anyone that has or is thinking about or should donate to bhshas.org. We won't be able to get into like the how and the why right now, because the phone's going to die unless God makes a serious miracle. But give whatever you can right there, because and pray to God that your money is used for a righteous cause. We found something amazing in the Pirkei Avot that we've been reading, and then at the end, Baruch HaShem, we finished with God's help. We finished Mesilat Yesharim on, I think, Sunday morning. It was just amazing. It was a really short book, but at the end, and in Pirkei Avot, they talk about what it means to basically, when a righteous person uses any physical object, especially a holy person that learns a lot of Torah, like a Torah scholar, when they take any kind of physical object and use it in their servitude of God, it elevates that physical object, and whoever had any part in giving them that object. Let's say that the person that enables them to use that object, whether it's food or a book or anything, the person becomes like someone who brought all the sacrifices at the Beit HaMikdash like in the holy temple, when the temple stood. Let's say a person that during the time when the temple stood, a person that brought a meal offering was credited with a meal offering. When they brought an elevation offering, they were credited with an elevation offering. But one who gives food to a Torah scholar is credited with all the sacrifices, like every single one. It was just so amazing. We have to do a whole at least a whole section of a stream just on that, because the commentary is so awesome, and there's verses that prove it too, like everything. Baruch HaShem. You guys have a good night. I will talk to you soon. Baruch HaShem. Oh, and may God have mercy on us all and seal us in the book of life for good this year, and grant us all the wisdom and the strength to outsmart and overpower the Yitzhak, and use all the tools He gives us to maximize our efforts to serve Him and help others.